Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Do you want to start us off?
We're back with Indy. We're in the 60s now. Harrison Ford playing him again. An older Indiana Jones at this point. But we actually opened the film in a flashback, 1945. The Nazis are back. That was one of the big things that we didn't get in number 4. But they are after some old artifacts again. And Indy's there to try and get there before them. And the Nazis have captured Indy in a castle or old house somewhere. And this was probably one of the most interesting parts, wasn't it? Because we got a de-aged Harrison Ford using the latest AI technology and stuff. What did you think of the de-aged Indy?
Ooh, well, it's getting better. That technology's getting better. We probably first seen it on this level when we went to see Rogue One all those years ago, and they did Grand Moff Tarkin. They brought him back to life, and it was pretty good then. You know, you could still tell it wasn't real. They also had a younger version of Leia in there, but at that point, it was still looking a little bit, like these cyborg robots you get, they're very good and they're convincing, especially from a distance, but you get up close and you realise, there's something wrong here. And it was a little bit like that then. Then we had, say, The Irishman, the Martin Scorsese film, 2019. Yes, yeah. They de-aged Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in that. And, it wasn't great, I didn't think then. It was passable. I still enjoyed that film, thought it was a fantastic film, but the de-aging thing was a bit... So now, 2023, they've done it to Harrison, as you said, for Indiana Jones. And it did look good. You can tell he's underneath all that, doing the acting. They can't de-age his voice. They might have done a little bit to stop some of the gravel. But it wasn't terrible. So, like you say, the film starts there straight away. We're back in the Second World War, and so he's youngster again. Whatever, mid-30s, 40 years old, something like that. Comparative youngster. I thought it looked good. And for me, it was easy to kind of ignore it because I think if they tried to do the whole film like that, I might have had issues. But considering it was just that opening set piece, it looked all right. And there's so much going on, and it's also that scene is at night, which was a deft choice really, because you can hide things in the darkness. You know what I mean, especially when it comes to stuff like that. So I don't know. What did you think? I thought it looked okay.
I thought exactly the same. I think, considering going all the way back to Tarkin, and I forgot about The Irishman, but that was another big example. There was obviously Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill in The Mandalorian, which was the worst one for me because it was really strange.
Which one do you mean? The episode where he turns up at the end, or the one where...
Yeah, where he turns up at the end. It got a little bit better in the next series, but it was when he opened his mouth, the talking was way off. But this one, I was like, this is actually really impressive. There's still that uncanny valley about it. You still know, but there was far more texture. It didn't look as plasticky in a way. And so I believed it a lot more. It's an interesting one, all this de-aging, because it's not like it's a new thing, because they've done it for years in cinema with makeup. To various degrees of success as well. And so you wonder why sometimes what they're opting for,
I think it's easier to make people look older than it is to make them look younger. You
it's
get
these,
like I think of Dr. Zhivago, where at the end, Omar Sharif, they made him look really old. Put talcum powder in his hair and a few wrinkles and stuff, and it's like, now he's an old man, but it's difficult to go the other way. And I think it's not just because of the look of the faces with less wrinkles and the hair being, full of colour and stuff. It's actual physicality as well, because, when people age, especially like Harrison Ford's, he's 80 now, something like that.
40, like 80?
I don't know. For this, I think they did a good job. They're obviously getting good at it. Disney.
They are getting better at it, and it was a good opening sequence, and it worked within it. I felt, and as you say, with it being night and the lighting and stuff, it covered a lot of the obvious stuff in there, and you get, as you say, you get lost in it because all the action, and it's all very jam packed. Everything going on, they're chasing down a train, and all this going on.
Nazis again.
It was really fun. Nazis again.
I mean, this was something I noticed as well. Straight away, you've got he's captured, like you said, and they got this bag on his head, and got that reveal. Oh, it's Indiana Jones, and he's obviously got the uniform on, so he's been trying to blend in, like we seen him do in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But straight away, this guy who's like the officer of the Germans who's questioning him was played by Thomas Kretschmann, and he has appeared in so many films as a Nazi officer. For example, he was in The Pianist with Adrian Brody, and he's the guy that when he gets discovered playing the piano and he gives him the tin of peaches, is the same actor. He was in a film years ago called Stalingrad, which was a German-made film. I think it was done from the point of view of the German soldiers in Stalingrad. He was one of the soldiers in that. Memory fails me at the moment, but I'm sure there's one or two other examples where this guy in particular, he's made a career out of it. And that's kind of an old-fashioned thing, because if you think of someone like, is it Till Schweiger, who was in Inglourious Bastards, he vowed never to play a Nazi in a film, and Tarantino managed to persuade him to do Inglourious Bastards because it's like, well, you're going to be a German in it, but you're going to be a Nazi killer. So he said, yeah, I'll do it. It's the only time he would ever put the uniform on. Whereas Thomas Kretschmann, bless him, his career has been... Oh, that's it. He's in Downfall as well. He's one of the officers in Downfall.
Right, yeah.
So major works where you can think it's this guy. So when he turns up in Indiana Jones and Stars, like, Thomas Kretschmann, are you shitting me? This guy is a career Nazi. But yeah, a fantastic opening sequence. I mean, get past all that, they've de-aged him in the first couple of minutes, and you're straight back into an Indiana Jones film. Like you said, it's exciting. He's captured, so first thing he's got to do is escape. And he's being hung as well. He's got a rope around his neck, so it's kind of high stakes straight away. And then I think he's saved by some bomb dropping on the church that they're in or something. And then the chase begins, like you say, on the train. We've got introduced then to Mads Mikkelsen's character, who is, they're after some spear, aren't they? Some sort of relic. It's a spear, but they find out it's actually a fake one. But Mads Mikkelsen, what he's actually after is this Archimedes dial that has got all this, crazy lore behind it that we kind of find out about throughout the film. But yeah, that first 10 minutes of the film, that's Indiana Jones again.
What the hell? Indy? Yes?
Train full of Nazis, lots of killing,
that's it.
Lots of explosions, punching them off the train. And you've got,
we also get
Toby Jones in there.
That's it. We get introduced to Toby Jones as the sidekick. Who was across there with him, much like in previous films, the kind of sidearm character that's along with him. But this is only the real place we see him, because he doesn't stay for the rest of the film because he's.
We see him in a flashback later on.
Yeah, but he was really great in the moment we see him, because I really like Toby Jones. He's a great actor.
He's really good.
So it's great to see him there. He kind of introduced us to the idea of this Archimedes device, and then of course the train blows up in the end, and then we cut back to modern times, but the 60s.
Yeah, 1960s.
And he's about to retire.
Yeah. They even have a little party for him, don't they?
Give him a clock. How old-fashioned is that?
Yeah, it was good though, because it ties into the whole time.
It does, yeah.
It's all about time, isn't it? That's the theme of this film. It's about time.
Definitely. And they kind of portray him as like the miserable old man living in the flat, sitting in his underpants, shouting at the neighbours
for playing the Beatles too loud.
Yeah, and then whilst he's working at the university, he's in the archives, I guess, and we get introduced to Phoebe Waller-Bridge,
Yeah, well, he's gone from the party and she hunts him down in a bar. She's been tailing him. And it's like, who's this? So, yeah, Phoebe Waller-Bridge comes into it and she's like his goddaughter. So we find out later that she's Toby Jones's daughter in it. And basically, yeah, she's looking for this dial as well. The whole thing is about the dial. She's trying to persuade him to, help her out, basically. We've seen Mads Mikkelsen at the start, and he's not like a Nazi officer. He's like a sort of science guy, isn't he? But by the time we're in the 60s, he's in America and working for NASA on the rocket stuff because, it's about to be the moon landing. That's the kind of time scale we're on here. So in other words, he's like Werner von Braun. He's the Operation Paperclip. They nabbed whatever German scientists they could, and Russia got the rest. And so he's one of them, isn't he? He's like an old Nazi, but they put him to work, and he's been working for NASA. But his preoccupation this whole time is about this dial, this Archimedes dial, and she's after it as well. But she's not after it to use it. She wants to just sell it. She's in it for fortune and glory, as they say in the Indiana Jones world. Whereas Mads is in it like he wants to go back and correct the mistakes that Hitler made, that kind of thing, and turn back.
But it's really great because
turn back time, if I could find a way.
Please don't sing ever again.
But she's one of those great indie characters, one of those great film characters where it's she's not good, she's not bad, but she's really good. She's
ambiguous,
and there's ambiguity, and it's about money, and it creates that kind of separate thread going on, a separate threat to it all. Mm-hmm. But I think she was really great. She's a really great character, really great performance, really funny. Really managed to toe the line between I'm helping you out, oh no I'm not, I'm actually taking it away kind of thing. I know she's the kind of actress and writer as well who seems to get a lot of stick from certain parts of the audience, but I think she's great. And
it was one of those, it was a Marmite character for people when, after we seen it, we posted about it on social media, and a lot of people agreed with us. It was great fun, switch off all of those things that are going on in your head telling you that it's, not as good as the old days, and just, buckle up and enjoy the ride. Most people did, but there were a lot of people that were hating on it, and she seemed to be that sort of conduit for all that hate. And I just can't get that. I just don't understand why. I think she was brilliant. And it's like you said, that side character, he always has some sort of sidekick, and what they did with this was she's his goddaughter. She's not romantically linked, but they're kind of emotionally linked from the past because he knew her as a young girl and stuff, and she's got her own little sidekick, hasn't she? That young lad, he's like her sort of short round in a way. So
Teddy,
and she was
Teddy.
Teddy was great, and she's funny, she's witty, she can throw a punch.
You should not have come back, Helena.
I thought it was a great character like that. I love that style, the style of her as well. She always just looks great. When they're doing that meeting about it's like an auction. When he catches up with her, and she's just so cool. And I just thought it was funny. You stole it from me, and I stole it from you, and I stole it from you, and that's capitalism. And it's just like pretty good script, like. Very entertaining, keeps it rollicking along at a good pace. So, all these people hating on her, saying, oh, she was dead annoying, she was this and that. It's just like, oh, give it up. What do you want? What do these people want? What would satisfy them? It's a bit sad, really.
It's sad, the moral decay that a bit of prosperity brings with it.
So, anyway, everyone's entitled to their opinion, of course, but I thought she was a great choice. And in a lot of ways carried the film, and Harrison let her as well. He's happy to sort of stand to one side and let her stand up there with him and be a big part of the narrative and sort of propel the film on.
Yeah, it was, and I think my favourite part of the film was when she really gets going. So when they get to Tangier, and we meet Teddy, and they have that auction, and then they end up in a big chase throughout the city on a little tuk-tuk, very reminiscent of the older films. It's big, spectacular stunt chasing sequence that we kind of are used to from an indie film, and I thought this is indie again.
Yeah, it's kind of James Bondy, wasn't it, with the tuk-tuk?
It was.
Was it Moonraker? They did the tuk-tuk chasing,
yes.
And it reminded me of that a bit. But that was exciting sequence. Some people complained about that. Even people complain about anything these days. But it was too long. I thought, I didn't either. I thought, it was pretty great.
They finish up in Tangier, and we end up going to Greece, to the Aegean Sea, because they need to do some diving to find another piece of this dial.
Yeah.
And there we meet Indy's old friends, which includes Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
And they go diving, and it all goes obviously wrong because Matt Mikkelsen catches up with them.
That was quite a funny sequence as well, because he's like, there's eels down there, and he's like, straight away you can see Indy go, eels.
They look like snakes.
No, they don't.
Private Brandy reporting for duty.
We should also mention as well that just before all that, we got John Rhys Davies to return in as Sulla.
Oh, yes.
Indy gets accused of murder, which he hasn't done. They sort of pin it on him. So he's got to get out of the country, and Sulla's the one that helps him do it. So it was a nice tie-in to bring back that character, I thought,
Boy, am I glad to see you, Saul.
I wish I could say the same, old friend.
Always great to see him. He's always great. Always brings character to it. And all this is like hopping around the world, just like in the old film, sequence to sequence, different country to a big showdown.
I think we even get the map at some point with the red line.
We do, yeah. And this is the final showdown, isn't it? And it's who gets there first.
This is it.
Indy and his two sidekicks, or Mads Mikkelsen and the evil
Nazi CIA
modern
officers.
Nazis, yeah.
Are you still a Nazi?
In typical Indiana Jones style, the Mikkelsen gang are just behind and kind of following Indy, working out all the puzzles, and then it's kind of like Indy solved the puzzle for them, and here we are, we've got the guns to your head. And it turns out they're after this last piece of the dial, and they can put the whole thing together, and now they can travel in time.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
Because that's the idea, isn't it? That the dial gives them basically a sort of geolocation in a way. That if you're there at a certain point in time and a certain location, you can basically go through some sort of portal or wormhole to go back to the past. So, whatever. That's, better than Crystal Skull aliens, but still, it's
interdimensional beings. Okay.
Now what?
Bring him.
And then, the Indy's on the plane with Mads and the Nazis, and she manages to get on the plane to save Indy, doesn't she? She does the whole motorbike chasing it up the runway thing, which is kind of cool.
Which is pretty cool.
And Teddy's trailing behind in some little charter plane. And they've kind of explained away the fact that he might know how to fly a plane earlier with one or two little bits of exposition that you're like, okay, whatever. And they all go through this loop in time or whatever. But instead of ending up in 1939, wherever it was going to be in the Second World War, where Mads was going to be able to correct all the mistakes the Nazis made, they end up way back in Archimedes' time, where
it's the siege of Syracuse.
There you go.
Yeah, they end up, and and all the big ships with the big wooden ships, and they're all firing the spears, and very ancient.
Yeah, ancient times
period.
And obviously they're in the sky in these sort of, I suppose, 60s planes, and they're firing these spears at the planes, and that idiot is shooting out the door, shooting people.
Yeah.
What are you doing, you idiot? They think we're a monster!
It's starting to get, by this point, the films, for me, was starting to get like, okay, so where are you going to go with this? Now we're back there 1,000 years, or whatever it is. How's this going to pan out? And obviously they parachute out, Indy and Helena parachute out the plane. That plane crashes and kills Mads Mikkelsen and his crew. So they're done. That's them. There's no other showdown between Indy and them. That's that. They crash. And then basically Archimedes, Indy gets to meet Archimedes, doesn't he? You know, from a distance.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to stay. And she's like, you can't stay. You're shot. We've got to get you back. We've got to save you. And he's like, no, my whole life's been about this. So this point, this is the weak point in the film for me. This was the ending was just like, oh, are we really going to end it like this? Is this going to be it? You know, it's just, you know, because obviously you couldn't stay. Even, you know, I like to turn off my sensible mind when watching fantasy stuff because you ask too many questions and it'll just spoil it for you. But even I couldn't stop myself thinking, well, he'd just kill everyone with disease just by being there. You know, as soon as he sort of had contact with everyone, he'd spread all these like modern diseases and the whole planet Earth would be wiped out. But anyway, what did you think of that ending? It was the weak point in the film. It didn't spoil it for me, but I did kind of think they didn't. It was almost like they went, "Oh, well, this and that happens, and that's good enough, and there we go, we got a film." And it's like, hang on, why didn't you just?
It felt a bit silly. It felt a bit rushed. We obviously also find out that this dial or whatever actually doesn't travel in time. It just does these 2 points. So that was so it was like, oh, this is a fucking pointless device, isn't it? But yeah, that's when it got a little bit. So the moment they went back, because it was all right I think the whole thing on the plane and the kind of stakes they were raising, and then it got to there and it was like, oh, what's this? And then, as you say, you know, they're dead, and you know he's got to go back. They're not going to leave him in ancient Rome.
And even though he's been shot, he's you know, there's in I suppose in the time that's progressed in the film, he's been shot. They got him on a plane. They travel in the plane. They go back through time. The Battle of Syracuse, as you say, they parachuting out the plane, and he still hasn't lost that much blood that he's either unconscious or dead. It's kind of like, why did you shoot him in the first place?
Yeah,
it just didn't really work.
It didn't make much sense, but as you say, you kind of just go, okay, whatever, you know, and where's it ending? And then they go back, obviously, and then we cut to him back in the flat in the 60s, and it's kind of like his retirement.
He's convalescing from the gunshot wound. He wakes up in bed, and she's there, Teddy's there, Helene's there, Teddy's there, and then Marion comes back in. Because this is the other thing, isn't it? We've learned that, you know, his son, who was played by Shia LaBeouf in the previous movie, has been killed in Vietnam. And I thought that was kind of a good way to deal with that character. Because, you know, there was some emotional weight to that. You know, when he gets asked about it, it's obviously been a big problem in his life. It's almost caused him and Marion to split up because they couldn't deal with it. They couldn't deal with the grief and the loss. So her coming back at the end, that final bit of, you know, meeting in the apartment and her coming back, and that was nice. That was a nice way to end the story of Indiana Jones on film. Nice to bring Karen Allen back in one more time, because she was always she was in the first one. She was in that Crystal Skull, which was nice. They brought her back. So I was glad to see her in it. And I liked the way that they ended that on a sort of almost like a romantic note, and you know, all's well that ends well. Everyone lives happily ever after. But it was just that Battle of Syracuse bit and the going back through time there. It was just, they felt rushed, and it felt like they didn't think it out well enough to. And that's what stops it for me from being one of the really great Indiana Jones films. It could have been thought of with the original 3 if they just spent that little bit more time to create a better ending. And if you think about it, if you've got some sort of device it's to do with time travel, there's loads of scope there to do some interesting stuff, and they just sort of bum rushed it a bit at the end.
They did. It was very strange, because it was like, I think it was a very nice ending with Karen Ellen. I thought that was kind of the ideal ending shot. And I agree, I liked how they dealt with the Shia LaBeouf thing, because they obviously couldn't bring him back into it, but it's nice that they nodded to it. We also got a photo of Sean Connery in there, which was nice as well.
Of course.
Of course. But it did, that sequence in the circus felt weird and rushed and out of place, and that was the disappointing bit. And it felt like, in a way, that part of the film, there was a beat missing. There was a whole sequence that felt like it could have tied everything up if you added another 15 minutes to it and created something. It felt just missing something at the end, because you kind of finished the film and you're like, oh, it just felt like there was, there should have been something else.
Yeah,
but not quite sure
it was
what.
rushed. It was rushed, and they didn't really know how to end it. But to me, I thought, there's so much scope there. You could have used that dial, and done that sort of thing where you go, he's used it to go back 10 minutes. And to avoid, they could have done a little bit of, and not had to go up in the plane and go back to Syracuse. They could have just stayed in that catacombs and done something there interesting. And maybe you see a little bit of him going back in time, but only enough to sort of jump back to the modern, I don't know. It doesn't matter now, they've done it and that's that. But, overall, I think a pretty good film. I watched it before you. I watched it locally here. Because you were away at the time in America. We'll come back to that in a minute. But, we're using the internet and everything so much, I couldn't stand all the spoilers going on. I had to go and see it as soon as possible. Went to the local independent theatre here, watched it, and then was happy to go back and watch it with you once you were back. So it was like a second viewing for me. And I enjoyed it even more the second time, which I couldn't say about. I never did that with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Of course I've watched it again since, but I didn't go back to the cinema to see it again.
No,
I did with this happily. I still think it's a great Indiana Jones film. I still think it's like 90% of it is enjoyable, and it's got lots of humor in there. It's got some great action set pieces. The chase on the horse when he's in New York City with the carnival.
Oh yeah.
That's all great. That was a really exciting set piece. It was a really good film, but for me, the ending let it down. That's all. It was a bit of.
That's it. I think that's exactly it. It's a very enjoyable film. It's not as good as the original trilogy. I don't think anything ever will be. But I enjoyed it more than the Crystal Skull, and I don't mind the Crystal Skull, but I thought this was better.
Well, suffered from the same sort of thing. It's the ending of the Crystal Skull that really lets it down as well. But
it is, yeah. But
I thought it was better. That I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the Crystal Skull.
Yes, and it is just that ending part. But I felt less offended by it being time travel-y weirdness than I did at it being interdimensional beings. And I think that was the difference, really. Yeah. But great fun. So, it's been a pleasant surprise that it was a fun, nostalgic trip.
Yeah.
And it was great to see Harrison getting one last run at it.
If you have enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com or join us on Patreon. All links below.